Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're in the 6th canto, reading chapter 4, which is entitled The Hangsa Guhya Prayers. And we'll be reading 15, 16, and 17, as 15 and 16 don't have a purport. And, we'll be doing 15, 16, 17, and 18. Oh, no, and 17. 17's on the board? 18 is on the board. Actually, today's verse was 15 to 17, but no problem. We'll just go through it. Actually, 17 has a very short purport, so it doesn't really count. So I'll just chant the Sanskrit for the prior 3 verses. Alam dagdher drumardine kilanam shivamashtuvaha vrakshik varakanya patnitve pratigriyatam. Translation: There is no need to burn these poor trees any longer. Let whatever trees still remain be happy. Indeed, you should also be happy. Now, here is a beautiful, well-qualified girl named Marisha, who was raised by the trees as their daughters. You may accept this beautiful girl as your wife. Itya mantra varauroham kanyam apsarasim nripa somo rajayayo datva te dharmeno paye mire. Translation: Sukadeva Goswami continued, My dear king, after thus pacifying the Prachetas, Soma, the king of the moon, gave them the beautiful girl born of Pramalocha Apsara. The Prachetas all received Pramalocha's daughter, who had high, very beautiful hips, and married her according to the religious system. Tebhyas tasyam samabhavad daksha prachetasa kila yasya praja vishargena loka apuritastrayaha. Translation: In the womb of that girl, the Prachetas all begot a son named Daksha, who filled the 3 worlds with living entities. Purport: Daksha was first born during the reign of Swayambhuva Manu, but because of offending Lord Shiva, he was punished by having the head of a goat substitute for his own head. Thus insulted, he had to give up that body, and in the 6th Manvatara, called Chakshusa Manvatara, he was born of the womb of Marisha as Daksha. In this connection, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes this verse: Chakshuse dvantare prapte praksarge kalavidrute ya sarsarja praja ishta sa daksho daiva chodita. His previous body had been destroyed, but he, the same Daksha, inspired by supreme will, created all the desired living entities in the Chakshusa Manvatara. That is 4th canto, 30th chapter, 49th shloka. Thus Daksha regained his previous opulence and again begot thousands and millions of children to fill the 3 worlds. It's interesting to note that Daksha is a progenitor, so it means he has sex many, 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 many times, unlimited times. So someone may think, oh, this does not seem like such a bad service. But you see that Daksha got in a lot of trouble. Very, very much trouble. Up to the limit of offending Lord Shiva, which is something probably the last thing a Vaishnav would be interested in doing, as he is the greatest devotee of the Lord. So you see that it's sex life is not without its risks. So today's verse. Yata sasarja bhutani. Yata sasarja bhutani. Daksho duhitrivatsalaha. Daksho duhitrivatsalaha. Retasa manasa chaiva. Retasa manasa chaiva. Tanmama vahitaha shrinu. Tanmama vahita shrinu. Yata sasarja bhutani. Daksho duhitrivatsalaha. Retasa manasa chaiva. Tanmama vahita shrinu. Please chant. Matajis? Sasaja Bhutani. Daksho duhitrivatsalaha. Retasa manasa chaiva. Tanmama vahita shrinu. Yata, as. Sasarja, created. Bhutani, the living entities. Daksha, Duhitrivatsalaha, who is very affectionate to his daughters. Retasa, by semen. Manasa, by the mind. Cha, also. Eva, indeed. Tat, that. Mama, from me. Avahitaha, being attentive. Shrinu, please hear. Translation. Shukadeva Goswami continued, please hear from me with great attention how Prajapati Daksha, who was very affectionate to his daughters, created different types of living entities through his semen and through his mind. Please repeat. Shukadeva Goswami continued. Please hear from me with great attention how Prajapati Daksha, who was very affectionate to his daughters, created different types of living entities through his semen and through his mind. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Duhitrivatsalaha indicates that all the prajas were born from Daksha's daughters. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that apparently Daksha had no son. Om Agina Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Gena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So explaining to somebody where we are in the Bhagavatam right now. People sometimes think of the Shastra as being, not devotees of course, but sometimes scholars or non-devotees, they think that the scripture is imaginary, that it's like a fairy tale. It's something made up. It's not an actual description of events. Or people might accept, well, it's metaphorical. It has value. It definitely has value, but it's representing something. It's not actually happening. So we may say, no. The Bhagavatam is literal. This is a literal history. And someone may say, oh, very interesting. So what are you reading this morning? Oh, well, I'll tell you. It's very, very easy to understand. So there's these guys, and they're underwater for thousands of years, and they came up and they got really mad at the trees. And they started to blow fire from their mouths, right? And then the king of the moon, you know the guy who lives on the moon, the king there? So he comes down and goes, please, don't be angry at the trees. Don't be mad at them. Because if you stop, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a daughter. You can marry this girl. And she was raised by the trees. Yeah, the trees are all her parents. Yeah, and then, so then these guys, they said, yeah, we'll do it. And they all had a baby with this girl at the same time. They had one child, and it was all these guys had it at the same time. So this may sound far out, as we say. And those of us from a Western background, we're so trained in rational thinking, we may have a difficulty accepting this. We may think, well, how is this really? But is this for real? Is this possible? And so sometimes we may become challenged. In fact, it is said that when the 5th canto was translated and published, that some devotees had difficulty, even some left the movement, because the description was too difficult, was too hard to accept, because we're programmed to accept the so-called rational scientists. Even what Prabhu said about the moon landing being not genuine and being fake, some devotees struggled with that. So this is such a great example of what is in the Bhagavatam, which we may have a hard time accepting. Now, so we may ask, how do we explain this, since it seems so difficult to understand? But actually, it's not difficult to understand. And this is through science we can understand it. It is through science that we can understand it. Now, we live in a very unqualified age. Prabhupada said at the present moment, the whole world is being controlled by a small number of demons. And he said that in one lecture in 1967, he said these demons are of a very low quality. They're the worst. They're of the lowest quality. So this is who is running the world. This is who controlling what we hear on the news and what we read on the internet and what is taught in the schools, and what is promoted as reality is actually the agenda of the demons. And now in the golden age, we're seeing a resurgence of Vedic culture. So we're being told so many. See, the problem is that if you control the microphone, then you can have anything. I have the mic, I have the seat. I can select somebody in the audience, and I can paint a very unflattering picture of that individual. And there's really nothing they can do. So in the modern world, the demons have the microphone. So everything we're told is very imbalanced and really unreasonable. You know, in the public eye, they're very famous atheists. In America, there are these men that write books about how there is no God, these scientists, and they're very popular. We don't really know how many are selling, but the people that we don't trust are telling us that they sell a lot. And when they're given the interviews on television, these scientists, and they're asked about everything, and they talk about God. Actually, these atheistic scientists who have degrees in evolutionary biology, they talk of God. So this is a big problem, because this breaks the first rule of academia. The rule of academia or scholarship is that you don't speak in a subject matter that you're not qualified. So these scientists are speaking on theology. Whether God exists or not is a theological question. It's not a scientific question. It's a theology question and should only be addressed by those who are trained in theology. Just like I may go on television and say, "Hi, I'm a Hare Krishna, and I don't believe that there's a cell. I don't believe that there's molecules and there's bacteria." Who wants to hear me talk? They may say, "What's your qualification? Did you study medicine or molecular biology?" "No, from my books, I know there's no such thing as cells and antibiotic medicine." No one cares to hear. So in the same way, when the scientists who are not qualified in theology speak on whether God exists, it breaks the first rule of scholarship. They have no training in understanding God. And so that is a major problem. So the world are listening to people who are not trained religiously, not trained in theology, talking about theological subject matters. So what this creates is not science. There's a phrase, it's called scientism. Scientism is the belief that science is a kind of belief system, like a religion, which should be embraced. That science in itself has some redeeming factor in its own existence. That's scientism, where you accept science like a paradigm that everybody should live in. It's not science. Science means that somebody makes a hypothesis and you do an experiment and you see if it's true or not. You see, if Richard Dawkins, the guy who wrote The God Delusion, a molecular biologist who goes around the world talking about how there's no God and people listen to him, if he lived in an ashram or a monastery for 5 years with monks praying, then it'd actually be interesting to hear what he had to say. It'd be very interesting then to hear about a scientist who had actually spent time training about understanding God as a theologian. That would be an interesting guy. I would listen to someone like that. But they have no experience in theology, no academic training in divinity. But because of the demons running the media and the educational institutions, this very unfair and unscholarly paradigm is being fostered on the world. And it just so happens if there's a religious person in the media or on television, they're always a kook. They're crazy, they're fanatics, they're a murderer, they're a very bad example. They're not really a spiritual person. So that's what everybody reads about in the newspapers and everyone worships the television and internet. It's where everyone gets their truth from. But as devotees, we understand the Supreme through science. We understand it scientifically. Now, someone may say, well, what's the precedent? How can we understand these very amazing phenomena that are described in the Bhagavatam? So, Sariputta Prabhu, our scientist devotee, he made a very interesting case. He said that there's a phenomena in this world called UFOs. Does everyone know what a UFO is? Okay. Yes, unidentified flying object. So, has anyone here seen a UFO? Yes. So, actually, if you do the research, there's many people that are in law enforcement, in the military, very legitimate people that give reports that they witness these craft, these spaceships appearing and doing things that defy the law of physics, our understanding of physics. Now, it just so happens I twice saw a UFO. with my own eyes. I'm saying in front of Prabhupada and Vrindavan and the assembled Vaishnavas. When I was in Australia, both times were in Australia. Actually, there's a lot of UFO activity where the farm is, New Govardhan. So early in the morning, I was sitting out in front of the temple, and I was looking, there are some hills, a ridge line kind of facing, the temple's on a hill, and there's a valley on the other side of the ridge. And I had this very unusual feeling. It was a strange feeling. And then I saw these lights across the ridges flash on like ships, and then flash off and disappear so fast, like the speed of the mind. And another time I saw, this was about 5 years later, actually it was seen around the world, there was this spiral in the sky. It was like a firework high in the sky, like a spiral that had no explanation. No one could explain it. Of course, it wasn't on the news in the West, but in Australia it was covered. And I was sitting there watching it. So Sariputta Prabhu, and I know many people who have seen similar things like this. Sariputta Prabhu said that these crafts, these ships, they do things which break the law of physics. The speed at which they move, it's impossible to explain with our common understanding of physics, what the scientists tell us is reality. So here you have, I've personally witnessed with my own eyes something which defies material explanation. Jai Shishi Gaurnitai, Jai Krishna Balaram, Jai Shishi Radha Shamasundar. And in fact, in America about 4 years ago, there was a press conference in Washington, D.C. with military leaders from every country, Russian generals, American generals, British military. And what this press conference was to tell the media that all of them had seen UFOs on their radars, and that they wanted the governments of the world to admit that they knew these things. So, someone may say, why are you talking about UFOs in the Bhagavatam class? Is this the Hare Krishna religion? We promote belief in UFOs? No. But what it is actual proof that there's phenomena that is documented, that has been seen by people, that defies our understanding of the modern scientist's explanation of reality. So here we have a very clear demonstration that there are things that happen that have no explanation materially. And indeed, these things you can even see in India. Sometimes you can see mystical things. Personally, I had a couple of experiences, because I'm kind of interested in these things, the mystical. So about in I would say it was 1990, I was staying in Vrindavan, and I had jaundice. And I was in Fogel Ashram, completely out of it. And of course, according to conventional Western medicine, there is nothing you can do for jaundice. You can suck on sugar candy, but you have to just recover, you relax. There is no real cure for jaundice. Your skin becomes yellow, my skin became yellow, my eyes became yellow. And I was suffering, I was really out of it. It was very hot also. So one devotee, he brought this Indian man to my room, and he translated, and this Brijbasi, he said that there is this one yogi, Sham Saki, he lives right at Seva Kunj, and he can cure jaundice. And I was like, I was very skeptical, because you hear so many things, right? But I was like, okay, I'll try it, no harm. So my friend kind of poured me on the rickshaw, Jagai Nitai from Los Angeles, and Brahmachari, who was from staying with me. So he poured me on the rickshaw, and they took me down, and there was this kind of little house, a temple right near Seva Kunj, and I walked inside, and there was this old Indian sadhu with chandan and tulsi beads, and he had these big Radha Krishna Astashaki deities in his house. So he looks at me, and then he goes over to the altar, and he takes this big collection of peacock feathers, and he bangs me in the head. And then he hands me from the feet of the deities this misri and makan. this rock candy, Mahaprasad, and some butter, fresh butter. And he says, eat it. So I eat it. And he goes, sit. And he had this throne. It was like a stone seat. It looked like an asan, but it was made of stone. And then below it was like a channel, like a space, like a moat. So I sat there, and then he hit me in the head again with the peacock feathers. And then he took a piece of wood, and he told me this is mango wood. And then he took a conch shell full of water. And then he started chanting mantras. And then he started to pour the water on different parts of my body. I just had a gamsha on. And then where he rubbed, he was chanting mantras and pouring water. Yellow liquid started to come out of my skin. And pour down and roll down. And then he was doing it. Pretty soon there was a yellow canal around the seat and going out, like the canal had a little tributary going out towards like a hole in the wall where it flowed outside. Bright yellow liquid. There's no explanation in Western medicine how this is possible. How bile, it's an overaccumulation of bile from the liver, can come through the skin. And he did this on me. He did it on different parts of my body. And then he said, all right. He said, you take rest. And then he turned to my friend. He said to Jagai Nitai, you have some problem? And he goes, well, I've been having this problem urinating. I don't know what it is. And he goes, come here. And then he lifts his foot and he bangs him 3 times on the bottom of his heel with his hand. And he goes, okay. So then my friend put me back in the rickshaw, took me to my room in Fogel Ashram, and I slept for like 2 days. I got up, I was totally normal. Skin was clear, eyes were white, jaundice was finished. This personally happened to me. And my friend had no more urinary trouble. Fixed. Another time, there's a very famous temple in South India, in Tamil Nadu. It's called Pakshi Tirtha. Anybody heard of it? Anyone know Pakshi Tirtha? Yes. So, why this temple is famous is that for thousands of years, 2 eagles have been coming to take Lord Shiva's remnants every day at noon. And these birds are like not normal looking birds. Now someone may say, how do you know they've been coming for thousands of years? Because even on the bottom of the temple, it's like a 1,000-year-old stone temple, there's carvings of the birds. Like old carvings of 2 birds coming. So I was on Padayatra in 1990, and we were in South India, so we thought, let's go. Let's take darshan of the eagles. So the story is that these birds were 2 sages that were cursed in a previous yuga, that they had to come and take Lord Shiva's remnants every day till the end of Kali Yuga in order to be released from their curse. And scholars, even mundane Western scholars, accept that there's really no explanation how these birds are coming. Because birds only live for 50, 60 years at most. But the same birds have been coming for thousands of years. So we brought Nitai Gaur Sundar, and we walked up the hill and went to the temple, and there's this big rock at the top of the mountain next to the temple. And sure enough, these 2 very funny looking birds first circled the temple and then came down, and then the priest chanted some mantras, gave them some Mahaprasad. It's a Shiva temple, and the birds eat it and then flew away. I saw this with my own eyes. But something very interesting happened. So then the next day, normally on Padayatra we stay for the night, and then we go the next morning. So the next day, we're on the road, and this is in the middle of nowhere. It's just paddy fields, sugarcane, there's nothing there. And we're walking on the road with Nitai Gaur Sundar and the devotees and Prabhupada and all of the devotees. And then I pointed out to Jai Vijay, an older godbrother, I said, look, and these 2 birds, they were the same birds from Pakshi Tirtha, came down, and it certainly looked like they circumambulated Nitai Gaur Sundar, the Padayatra cart. And then they flew away. And then we thought, wow, that's amazing. That's really far. They came for darshan. So now you may say, well, oh, this sounds very interesting. I would like to go and see this. But you cannot anymore because they stopped coming. And not so like sometime after we were there. They don't come anymore. It's finished. Of course, we like to think that Nitai Gaur Sundar released them from the curse, you know? So there's lots. I could spend many hours talking about phenomena that you can witness yourself nowadays that defy explanation. And in India, so many. A friend of mine was in Kurukshetra, and one sadhu just manifested a Shiva linga in his hand, just from the air. You know? So many things are going on. You can see. If you're interested in these things, you can find. So this is a miracle. Of course, someone may say, well, why, can't we see something like this? Why not Krishna should come down with his and show but actually this would be a distraction. This is not Mahaprabhu's mood. If you study the life of Mahaprabhu, you will see that actually there wasn't so much mysticism, external mysticism. No, it is a much higher mysticism. It is what is more miraculous is the transformation and the experience of Paramatma in the heart of the Vaishnava. That is a much more mystical phenomena. And that is why devotees are all scientists, because all of us have experienced this. Every devotee has experienced how Krishna promises that if you become my devotee, in your heart, I will help you come to me. All of us, every devotee, we've experienced these little miracles where things happen basically every day of our life as a devotee. The Lord is giving us intelligence within and without. We're also witnessing these amazing things. So this is the real miracle. If you study Mahaprabhu, he did something. He made a mango tree that grew from a seed and made big mangoes with no skin and no seed. He embraced some trees that were, had a Leela with Lord Ram. But that was exceptional. For the most part, the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, they experienced Krishna Prem Prayojan. And this is the miracle. Because to see something amazing, to see, trees raise a girl, yeah, that would be amazing. Or to see the king of the moon appear. But then, what is the benefit? That's miraculous, but it's not as miraculous as when you realize through observation that God lives in your heart. But much more interesting than that is that God who lives in your heart really likes you. He loves you, in fact. And he's trying to fulfill all of your dreams, actually. That's amazing. That's much more interesting mysticism. That is actually miraculous. That God lives in your heart and he knows everything about you and he's watching you and he loves you dearly and he's trying to influence you so you can come back to him and actually enjoy a loving relationship with him where he wants to serve you and make you happy and fulfill all of your dreams forever, eternally. That is something that is unbelievable. That is magnificent. That is incredible. And that can be experienced now, today. That miracle. And these external things, miracles, if some devotee did something amazing, like if I manifested a big bag of gulab jamans, then that would become the last nail in the coffin of my spiritual life. Be like, there is that guy who manifested the gulab jamans. And I would get so much mileage out of that. I would stop being everyone would know I'm that guy. So obviously I'm very special. I don't really need to chant attentively because it's clear I'm already part of the team. It would be finished. My spiritual life would be finished. So that's why the Lord doesn't do these miraculous things. Because they'd become a distraction. They would become a distraction. But sometimes these things occur. Sometimes they do happen even in devotional service. I'm sure if I went around the room, everyone could share some miracle that they've experienced in devotional service that has no explanation. All of us, this is why it's a science, because we've all personally experienced Krishna's reality. That was an experiment. Prabhupada said one time, wonderful statement. He said, "You like to have sex? So, we don't say no sex, we say no illicit sex. So get married and have sex. Enjoy sex like that." Then he said, "You like meat? You like the meats?" He goes, "Then you enjoy the sweet meats." You know, sweet meats are what in English we call like sweets, like ras malai, gulab jamun, burfi, pera, like that, sweet meats. Then Prabhupada said, "Do you like to gamble?" He said, "Then gamble your whole life that Krishna is God." So that's what we're doing. Every one of us, we're gamblers. We're scientists in the sense that we're making an experiment. Okay, we read Prabhupada's books and we thought, this is speaking to me. In my heart, I feel something's going on. Krishna's not just an attractive painting or picture. Something else is happening. So let me try. Let me join this ISKCON movement. And then we associate with devotees, we chant Hare Krishna, we take prasadam, and then things start to happen. We have miraculous experiences. And then we realize this is really true. This is really true. This is amazing, amazing. But because material desire is so powerful, even though we witness that Krishna is God and we experience these miracles, still we're so dull. We don't take to the chanting of Hare Krishna seriously because we have sense gratification on the mind. We're so dull, it becomes revealed to us, but we're so dull that still we want to think of mundane things. Because such is the attachment to sense gratification for millions of births. See, devotees, it's not a question of jnana. Devotees are convinced that Krishna is God. That's not the problem. The problem is that, do we realize we're his eternal servant? That's the question. You know that in the early days of ISKCON, Shamasundar tells the story. He said that they were in San Francisco, in Haight-Ashbury, the Frederick Street Temple, and they were preaching, and he said they had a crisis. He said they had the rent was due the next day, and they had no money. And they'd always depended on Prabhupada and expected miracles, but this looked really desperate. He said that there was no money, and the rent was significant. So he said after Mangalarti, he and Malati were walking down the sidewalk, and there was nobody on the street because it was early morning in America. And he said, all of a sudden, he looked, and there were $100 bills blowing down the sidewalk towards them. The wind was blowing $100 bills. A bunch of $100 bills were blowing down the sidewalk. And they went, and no one was there. And they picked them all up, went back, paid the rent, no problem. So there's so many things like this. We all have experienced, I'm sure. Every devotee can tell some amazing story, or many, about mystical phenomena, of things that have no explanation. So we experience this. But if we were to see Daksha and Soma and the Prachetas and Marisha, then it would become a distraction. We'd become a devotee of Soma. We'd want to go to the moon planet, right? Find out, what is that mantra for going to the moon planet? It's good for my devotional service. I'm just, respecting the demigods. It's very nice. So that's not done because it's a distraction from pure Krishna consciousness and depending exclusively on the holy name. That is what Lord Chaitanya has taught. And in fact, Srila Prabhupada was here in his quarters and devotees desperately wanted him to stay. Desperately, every devotee. In fact, some people say, some people put forth that Prabhupada was the last guru, there's no more gurus. It's a pretty bunk argument. There's so much that's bogus about it. But one thing is like, well, why Prabhupada didn't talk about when he passed away, who would be the guru and how because devotees never, ever wanted to talk about something that referred to Prabhupada disappearing. It was so unpalatable to them. They would never ask a question that was so inauspicious that the context was Prabhupada leaving the world. So they never brought it up. And in fact, if you look in folio and you look for examples of where Prabhupada is asked about when he leaves, it's not from the devotees, it's from the karmis. The reporter, a couple of times, reporters asked Prabhupada, said, what will happen when you die? Who will carry on this movement? And of course, the famous answer, what did Prabhupada say? He said, I will never die, but I will live forever in my books. And the devotees were like, Haribol! Because that's what they wanted to hear. It wasn't like, so Srila Prabhupada, we just wanted to get it clear. So when you die, we were just wondering when you're gone. No, it was such a question wasn't conceivable. And that is why this is something that is, in a sense, looks like a loose end. Legacy, succession, because it was complete. In fact, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, in the last days of Prabhupada's manifest pastimes, even he forbid, you couldn't even discuss anything about disappearing, even if it had nothing to do with Prabhupada. Even if it was about disappearance of some vice, or anything that even remotely referred to like leaving. Tamal Krishna Maharaj would interview the devotees before they would see Prabhupada and say, you can't say this, you can't say this, you can't say this, you can't say this. And if they did, they'd get in big trouble. So anyway, just a little point about that issue. But, so that is really our line. It's about even the Goswamis. You don't read about Jiva Goswami, manifesting a mango tree. No, because that wasn't what the Goswamis came to taught. They taught that if you chant Hare Krishna internally, you will start to understand your eternal relationship with Radha and Krishna and who you are. And that's the miracle. That's the mysticism. That's the magic which we are pursuing. Not something amazing from a previous yuga, some cosmological phenomena that defies description. That's not what Mahaprabhu's being a Rupanuga is. It's about submitting to the holy name and then understanding that everything is in the holy name. That's mystical and amazing and defies description. That is what we do as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. That is the process. And you see, anyone who's doing that is completely satisfied in their spiritual life. They're not bewildered by like, oh, I read in Krishna book that this devotee he had 5 billion bodyguards. One devotee, there's a famous interview, he kind of left the movement, and before he went to see Prabhupada and he was expressing doubt about the books. His name was Jamadagni. And he was like, Prabhupada, this guy in the Krishna book, he had like 5 billion bodyguards, but how is that possible? And then he said, like, where were all the toilets for them? And Prabhupada said, if you don't like that part, then you don't worry about that part. You don't accept. If you don't like it, then you don't accept. Who is asking you? Prabhupada became quite stern, actually. He didn't appreciate it. There's other parts of the conversation. You can look on folio. It got quite heavy, actually. But, so that is not our, that if you talk to any devotee that is seriously chanting Hare Krishna, you will see that they have no doubt, because they're experiencing that magic, the amazing thing that Radha and Krishna live within the heart, and there's a whole other world that is calling us, that is the world of reality. But in order to understand that, we have to die. We have to let go. That's the thing, that someone may say that I don't want to go back to Godhead in another life. I need to go back as a Bai, because then it doesn't count. If it's not me, it's someone else who I don't know. So we can be very attached to the body and the false ego and our sense of self. But we have to practice that at the time of death, only our relationship with Krishna will survive. That is us. That's the only thing, is our love for Krishna, how we're looking to Krishna. Look within and you see that part of you that loves Krishna. That will not die at the time of death. But your face, your eyebrows, your grandmother, your cousins, your karma, they will all be finished. And if you have an attachment to them, then death will be a little unpleasant for you. But if you start to cultivate now a detachment from all the things connected to this body and just meditate on that, your affection for Krishna, that will go on in the womb in your next birth. That doesn't die. That's you. And if you can meditate like that, then there is no cause of suffering. You know, it's very interesting. In the West, this is a very hard thing for us to understand. But you see in the Vedas, just like Daksha, he had a problem and then he changed bodies. But see, in the Vedic culture, you change a body, it's not a big deal. It's like someone does austerity to get a particular end, then they die, then they come back as another person, and they do the thing that they wanted to do. And there's no problem. Now you may say, but if I'm dead, I won't remember anything. What's the point? How is it me? So this is a materialistic understanding. This is a gross understanding. If we live internally, that which has a relationship with Krishna and has an understanding, those things will not be lost. That will carry through to the next birth, and it won't really matter that we have it'll be us in Gurukul in Mayapur, going to the temple and becoming a serious preacher and paying the debt to Prabhupada. We may think, oh, that won't be me. It'll be somebody else. But no, that is you. Because that'll be your identity, your relationship, and your pure devotion, which you're developing in this lifetime. So that is what we have to really fix, is who we are, what our identity is. And it can become very easy to be distracted. Because we have devotee friends, devotee family, devotee parents, devotee children, and then we have attachment. We think, oh, it's spiritual, so it's okay. It's Krishna conscious, but it's not necessarily okay. And the evidence I give is that in the 11th, and we've talked about this, that in the 11th canto, Krishna tells Uddhava, he says, now I'm going to leave, so very soon you're going to come back to my world. And now you should separate yourself from all your personal friends. So Uddhava was a yadu, he wasn't going down to the pub with Fred and Larry and Jethro, down at the pool hall. They were all pure devotees, but Krishna's saying, no, you actually have to give them up too now and remember me alone. So even our devotee friends, devotee family, we have to develop detachment from and become Krishna's friend exclusively. That is our project. Now, someone may say, well, this sounds very impersonal because we have loving relationships. But the thing is as we enhance our relationship with the Lord, then our relationships with the devotees become clear, and they become sweet, and they become free of inebriety. So Daksha, he continued, even in another body. It wasn't a challenge for him. So we also have to cultivate this. If Krishna takes us at the end of this life, great, wonderful. But it may not be. Prabhupada may want to further engage us in his ISKCON movement, I know there was one Prabhupada disciple in Los Angeles who became very ill. And a friend of mine was looking after him. And he was a very sincere devotee, distributed millions of books, one of the big book distributors in America in the 70s when Prabhupada was here. And this devotee was telling me this Prabhupada disciple was so ill, and he was just crying and crying in the hospital saying, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. I haven't done enough for Prabhupada. I have not done enough for Prabhupada. I want to return. So I think many devotees may have this consciousness that we don't feel like we actually paid our debt just yet. So we will return in a better form, in a purified form, without our crazy mind and dysfunctional childhood and commercial jingles, for pasta sauce in our heads from when we were 8 years old. So we have to cultivate that detachment from this idea, devotional service is really hard, but I'm going to die soon and go back to Godhead, so I don't really have to worry about it. No, we have to expect we may come back. So it's so serious that we have to cultivate detachment. So when we do come back, it won't be traumatic. And we won't be attached and come back and be another attached person, struggling with our minds and senses. So this is what the Bhagavatam preaches, is a message of detachment from everything. You know, Kormarupa Prabhu, who left his body recently, I was friends with him, and I spent time with him in Denver, Colorado, not so long before he disappeared. And we were talking privately, and he said, he goes, Abhaya, I want to tell you something personal, but I'll share it with you. He said that I had 3 good friends in this world that I considered my good friends. And he said all 3 of them died. Krishna took all 3 of them. And he mentioned them to me. All like Prabhu disciples that were like his confidants, the people that he would go to talk to and express his mind. And he said, why I think Krishna did that, he says, Krishna was really trying to explain to me, now it's time that he is my friend. And I take shelter in him and confide in him. Now that's a really heavy realization. And then not long after that, Krishna took him back to Goloka. In his case, I think he did go directly back for seva. It certainly seemed like that. So we have to really cultivate detachment. Relationships are so much distraction, like the material phenomena we talked about in this class, but we ultimately have to go inward and cultivate a real relationship and friendship with the Lord and try to hear him and see him. And of course in Vrindavan, this is possible because one devotee, I had seen this before, and another devotee recently, I was talking, and I noticed, but we're creating a web series for Vrindavan.tv. I'm working with Uddhava Bandhu. It's called Vrindavan Realizations, where we're interviewing devotees that have been in Vrindavan for a while and ask them what their insight is of the effect of the Dham long term. So this one devotee I was interviewing was saying that sometimes he sees Radha Shama Sundar, that Radharani, sometimes she will drop flowers from her hands. They're not just falling. And I thought I was crazy. I saw this January 1st in the morning. It looks as if she's like releasing flowers from her hand. So there's mysticism in Vrindavan Dham. We can experience reciprocation. That's the magic of Vrindavan, is that Krishna is not theoretical, but that he immediately reciprocate with him. So it's a very nice place to be. And we can experience true mysticism. But it's difficult. It's austere because Krishna will take away what we've been used to for a million lifetimes: friendship, society, and love. So that's why it's such a tough place. But we have to go deep. We have to go deep and see, what's really going on and go internally. So thank you very much. If anyone has a question, something brief. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.